This week on ANN, the Adventist Church recognizes last month's World Refugee Day with stories of Adventists helping those in need.
ADRA provides aid to the Rohingya fleeing Myanmar.
And a group of volunteer medical doctors assist internally displaced people in Iraq.
These stories and more coming up.
Thank you so much for joining us this week. Today we are going to share with you some very special stories about Adventists helping those in need. These stories were originally shared by Ted Wilson, president of the Adventist Church, on a program called Revival for Mission.
Today, there are more than 65 million people, men, women, and children, who have fled their homes due to war, lack of food, or violence. They are migrants, refugees, and internally displaced people.
These people have endured the worst of humanity. They have seen their family members killed, tortured, and even starved to death. They are victims of atrocities that many of us cannot even fathom.
We understand this is a complicated issue with no easy answers. But to the Adventist Church and those who volunteer in these situations, this is simply a humanitarian situation, a call of the Lord to protect and comfort His people.
We start with the Rohingya, a group of people fleeing persecution in Myanmar. The Rohingya are a stateless Indo-Aryan ethnic body, many of whom are Muslim. They are called the most persecuted people in the world.
Since August of 2017, more than 500,000 Rohingya have flooded into Bangladesh. Many are women and children. The Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or ADRA, has been on the ground to help in this horrific situation. We sat down with Elizabeth Tomanko, who recently came back from Cox's Bazar, where many of the Rohingya have been placed.
The Rohingya are a stateless Indo-Aryan ethnic body, many of whom are Muslim. They're called the most persecuted people in the world. Since August of 2017, more than 500,000 Rohingya have flooded into Bangladesh. Many are women and children. The Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or ADRA, has been on the ground to help in this horrific situation. People sat down with Elizabeth Tomanko, who recently came back from Cox's Bazar, where many of the Rohingya are placed.
The Rohingya have faced several military crackdowns in Myanmar since the late 70s, the largest and most recent of which started on August 25th of last year. Thousands of people were killed, many were injured, tortured, raped, their land and villages and homes were burned down, and those who survived, hundreds of thousands fled for their lives and crossed the border, across the river into neighboring Bangladesh. I had the opportunity to spend several weeks in Bangladesh and in some of the camps late last year, about 2 months into the conflict, and it's quite overwhelming. It's really hard to really get a sense of it until you're there and you visit. The camps literally go on as far as the eye can see. Very congested conditions, very rudimentary makeshift shelters, dirt roads, tons of kids running around, tons of people overall, very crowded conditions. I mean, if you can imagine moving 1 million people into a virtually empty area and then trying to provide all the basic needs for them, some of that's been accomplished, but there's still a lot of infrastructure that's lacking. ADRA's been working in Bangladesh since the early 70s, when Bangladesh gained independence from Pakistan and became an independent country. And ADRA has been involved in virtually every major conflict and natural disaster since then. With this major influx, ADRA was again one of the first organizations to respond. So since September of 2017, ADRA has been able to provide emergency food rations to about 50,000 individuals. We're also providing emergency shelter, basic household items, hygiene items, and support for camp infrastructure for thousands more people. And ADRA continues to work in preparation for this year's monsoon season, and we have ongoing programs that will continue at least until the middle of next year. ADRA, as a worldwide organization and as the humanitarian arm of the Adventist Church, believes that everybody, regardless of nationality, religion, gender, political affiliation, regardless of any of that, deserves the right to basic care, essential services, and goods. And so ADRA is going to continue to work in the Rohingya camps, helping to meet those basic needs of individuals who've gone through such immense trauma already and who deserve the right to live and to have those services met.
In 2015, ASI Europe started Adventist Help, a mobile medical clinic to respond to the refugee crisis in Lesbos, Greece.
After leaving Lesbos, Adventist Help settled into a refugee camp of 700 people in Oinofyta, Greece. They stayed and worked in Oinofyta for a year and a half until the camp was closed in November 2017.
In early 2017, Adventist Help joined forces with the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or ADRA, to start the first ADRA clinic just outside Mosul, Iraq. This emergency hospital and primary health clinic is serving almost 100,000 people. It is also one of the first health interventions in the region.
The people in the Hassam Sham U2 camp are internally displaced people, or IDPs, who have escaped ISIS. The clinic, run by volunteer doctors, nurses, dentists, and other medical personnel, serves hundreds of people each day.
In January this year, I came to Iraq with a team of medical professionals to do a needs assessment. We'd heard there was a big need for medical assistance in the IDP camps east of Mosul. And one of the big gaps we identified was the lack of emergency medical services. If you know anything about Mosul, I'm sure in your mind it would conjure up images, some of the most horrific images that you could imagine. We're dealing with a population of about 100,000 people here who've escaped the fighting. They've seen some of the worst crimes against humanity that have been in the history of this planet. The people we see on a day-to-day basis have experienced beheadings, crucifixions, loss of family members, loss of wives as sex slaves to ISIS, loss of children, torture. It's unimaginable the horrors that these people have seen, and for us, it's so crucial that we are here to be able to help relieve the suffering of this really ravaged population. So the project started off as we were planning a small mobile unit. Thanks to our collaboration with ADRA, we were able to obtain funding from the United Nations to develop the project into something quite a lot more substantial. It's developed into a 45-bed emergency unit and inpatient facility. It's the first emergency unit inside the camps. There are a number of primary clinics in the area, but no emergency care at all. And if you think about the population, it's 20,000 children sitting here without emergency care. So it's a huge gap that we are filling. So adjacent to our emergency unit and inpatient facility, we now have a comprehensive primary care unit as well, with 6 consultation rooms for primary care, for nurses and doctors, as well as a mental health unit and later a dental unit. This is a really critical project. It's an Adventist hospital in the 1040 window. It's a huge opportunity for us to reach out to a population that is really needing us here. And for me, it's been one of the biggest privileges of my career, being able to come and serve in this community. And the job satisfaction that I get here is second to none. And I'd like our fellow Adventists to experience that. I'd like to encourage everybody who can to get involved in this work. It's such an entering wedge into a region that really needs help. We had to break down barriers, to break down prejudice, and to reach out to a community that is desperate for help. It's clear that it's a sustainable intervention. We have enough doctors and nurses in our church to be able to run a program like this and to expand it significantly. Just seeing how easy it was to get this facility going and to get it staffed. It's taken 3 months. There was nothing here 3 months ago, and here we have a full 45-bed hospital, X-ray unit, laboratory, 9-bed emergency room, primary healthcare unit, mental healthcare unit, dental unit. It's beautiful. It really is beautiful. To me, this is the biggest job satisfaction I could ever get. So yeah, I plan to carry on with this kind of work for the rest of my life. I'm hoping we can just do hospital building and setting up field emergency units and facilities of this nature all over the place.
ADRA and Adventist Help recently had a joint assessment visit to Uganda to co-design a project and present to potential donors. Currently, there are more than 1.3 million refugees in Uganda, many of them from South Sudan, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Burundi. We ask your prayers for the teams as they move forward with the plans to help those vulnerable people who are in need.
Coming up, we hear the story of a special woman who gave her last days to serve those who are hurting.
But up next, a school for refugees fleeing violence in Syria opens in Lebanon.
The American Civil War lasted from 1861 to 1865, 4 years of misery for the nation. The death toll was in excess of 700,000, more than in all the other wars in the United States or involving the United States, from the Revolutionary War down to the Vietnam War. But what if I were to tell you there is a battle raging right now with a far higher death toll? And then, what if I told you that war began in heaven? Well, it did, and you're involved. Now let me explain. Long ago, God created a perfect world. But according to the Bible, it's hard to understand, but there was war in heaven. And Lucifer, a perfect angel, became Satan, who was kicked out of heaven and came down here to the earth. Now, why would he rebel? You know why? He wanted worship. He was jealous and he wanted to sit in God's place and receive the worship that belongs only to God. When he came down here to the earth, he didn't lose sight of that objective. He still wants that worship. So he convinces the world that God is bad and that people are better off without God. Now you get to decide who's telling the truth, and you can choose whose side you're on.
Welcome back.
We now travel to Lebanon. There are more than 1 million refugees living in Lebanon, a country of just over 6 million people. The Adventist Church's attached field, the Middle East and North Africa Union, is in the capital city of Beirut.
Also in Beirut is the Adventist Learning Center, a school for Syrian refugees run by Alexis Hurd Shires. When Alexis decided she wanted to help the refugees in Lebanon, she visited their homes, ate with them, and listened to their needs.
These refugees needed a school and medical care. While Alexis couldn't provide medical care, she could help them with an education. Here is her story.
There are more than 1 million refugees living in Lebanon, a country of just over 6 million people. The Adventist Church's attached field, the Middle East and North Africa Union, is in the capital city of Beirut. Also in Beirut is the Adventist Learning Center, a school for Syrian refugees run by Alexis Hurd Shires. When Alexis decided she wanted to help the refugees in Lebanon, she visited their homes, ate with them, and listened to their needs. These refugees needed a school and medical care. While Alexis couldn't provide medical care, she could help them with an education. Here is her story.
In doing my needs assessment and talking with the community leaders and with just people that we met over and over, we were hearing this need that we need something for Syrians, and asking them if we could do something to make your life better, what would that be? And it really boiled down to two things, medical, dental care, and education. And as a social worker, I felt like education is something that I could lead out in a little bit more. Within 4 months after arriving here in Lebanon, we had the building and it was being repaired, and in July of 2013, we opened the doors. This is actually an alternative education center. We have children between 6 and 13, 14 years old. Basically, we have a group of kids who have huge lapses in education. Maybe their school was bombed, or there were no teachers, or the parents were scared to send them to school. So most of our students have lapses of education from anywhere from 2 to 4 years. So they're very behind. They also have a huge barrier here to being in school because of the sheer number of refugees that there are. Basically, every 1 in 3 people is a refugee in the whole country, and the infrastructure of the country isn't set up to deal with that many refugees. So when I say alternative education, it's really kind of with the goal of pushing them along, combining grades together to get them up to where they need to be, and also to really push, in our case, English language skills, so they are at later dates able to adapt either to local schools or, as has been the case with many of our refugees, when the UN finally moves them and relocates them to maybe Australia, Canada, the UK, they have the English language skills to be able to adapt and just fit right in where they are. Until now, we've just had grades 1 through 6, but hopefully this coming year we're going to be able to keep our recent graduates and start a 7th grade as well. You know, when we started out, they didn't know that we were Christian or even Adventists. They assumed that we came from the UN or from some other NGO. And it was about 6 months in that they started saying, like, you don't behave like any other NGOs that we know, like, you don't behave like the UN people. What's different about you guys? And so that kind of opened the door for us to share who we were. You know, we have in our mind what we think refugees are, what we think people are of a different race or a different religion, but people are people no matter where you are. And the same goals that push us, or the same desires that push us to make decisions that we make, are the same things that push them to make the decisions they make. And really for them, it comes down to protecting their family, you know, wanting to put their kids in a safe place and put themselves in a safe place where they can live and they can thrive. And being here and watching families that are like so traumatized by war, so traumatized by living under ISIS, and watching the transformation that love and affection and trust, the difference that it can make in their lives and in their personalities, and watching them just bloom again. I think that's been a really powerful thing for me to watch, and it's something that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to see unless I put myself in regular contact with people in this context. I know for many people that's a scary thing to do, but putting aside race and religion and all these kind of things, people are people. And when you treat them with respect, and when you give them that opportunity, you find things that you never thought that you would find, and you see things that you wouldn't see anywhere else.
Today we've shared just some of the tragic stories of refugees around the world. Unfortunately, we could go on. Please pray for the people who are suffering and those who are working to alleviate their pain and suffering. Our final story is about a very special lady. Elder Wilson has more.
During this episode of Revival for Mission, we've shared just some of the tragic stories of refugees around the world. Unfortunately, we could go on. Please pray for the people who are suffering and those who are working to alleviate their pain and suffering. We want to end with the story of a very special woman. Lorena Stander was diagnosed with cancer in 2016. During her anointing in early 2017, she felt the Lord was calling her to serve those in need while she still was healthy. She joined her friends Michael and Frederick von Horsten in Iraq to become the clinic's first nursing director, a post she served in until her health forced her to return home to South Africa. Sadly, Lorena passed away in August 2017. Her love and dedication to the refugees in Iraq inspired everyone she met. Here I read a little bit from an email she sent to a close friend about her hopes and prayers for those she was serving. In my devotions this morning, I read how Lazarus' death made Jesus cry, and I was reminded of the text somewhere in Ephesians that says that the same power who raised Jesus from the dead is the power that recreates hearts. I'm praying that this power will somehow find its way into the hearts of these war-struck people, as we serve them and hopefully heal them from their physical pain. May they experience the true healing of forgiveness, both personally and as a group. And may they yield to God's whisper to be ready when He comes to wash the earth of all this pain and hatred. Maybe only then will we all be able to smile from deep within. It will only be in heaven that Lorena will truly see the impact she made on those around her. Perhaps as you have listened to the stories of Alexis, Elizabeth, Michael, Hilda, and Lorena, the Lord has been speaking to your heart, calling you to do something for Him. Perhaps asking you to step out of your comfort zone, to rescue those in physical, social, emotional, and spiritual need. This is the essence of total member involvement. Reaching out to those who are in the direst of need, being the hands of Jesus, revealing Him to those who are in darkness. You can visit adra.org, adventisthelp.org, or adventistlearningcenter.org to see how you can be involved in the programs you have seen today. Let me pray with you now that the Lord, who cares so much for each of these people, touches your heart and gives you the opportunity to serve in a special way. Our Father in heaven, we ask that you will guide all those viewing this special program to realize that they can be the hands and the feet of Jesus. Give them an understanding that they do not have to go to the ends of the earth, but they can minister to people right next door. Lord, help each of us to understand that total member involvement means being connected with you on a daily basis, and that you can give us the wonderful touch of your presence and your ministry in helping people physically, mentally, socially, and spiritually. Lord, bless the refugees of the world and bless each of us as we try to alleviate this pain and point them to a land where there will never be any more refugees. In Jesus' name we ask it. Amen.
If you would like to get involved in any of these ministries, you can visit adra.org, adventisthelp.org, or adventistlearningcenter.org to see how you can be involved in the programs you have seen today.
We'll be right back with our weekly features.
The church was undergoing practical challenges. The Hellenistic Jews were complaining against the Hebraic Jews because the former's widows were being overlooked in the daily distribution of food. The apostles decided that they needed to focus on the ministry of prayer and the Word, and so they requested for 7 deacons to be chosen for these other practical tasks.
The apostles asked us, as a group, to choose 7 men who were known to be full of the Spirit and have wisdom. This proposal from the apostles pleased our whole group, so we went about selecting the 7 men. Once the men were selected, they were presented to the apostles. The apostles laid their hands on them and prayed for them.
With prayer as a priority, the church would never fail. After this, the number of disciples increased rapidly, and a large number of priests became obedient to the Word.
Did you know there's an app that can help you pay your tithes and offering?
Emily Mastrapa is here to tell you all about it during this week's social media highlights.
Adventist Giving is providing a new way for people to pay their tithes and offerings. Tithe is 1/10 of your increase from either money or product that is returned to God. Offerings are our response of love to God's blessings and goodness. They serve as a means of helping to further integrate God into our financial side of our lives. Adventist Giving allows you to return your tithe and give your offerings online or on your phone while you're doing your online banking or on a long trip, on vacation, or even if you're unable to attend church due to an illness or something else. You can download the app from the iTunes and Google Play app stores. Just search Adventist Giving. Your first step in the app is to designate a church to send your tithes and offerings to. You can search for your location or scroll through a list of churches until you find yours. You can choose whether you would like to make a one-time donation or set up recurring donations. If you choose recurring donations, you can decide how often you would like them to occur, including weekly, every 2 weeks, twice a month, monthly, every 2 months, quarterly, or even yearly. You can also choose from your church's local offerings categories, your church's conference categories, or world church categories, and designate exactly how much of your gift goes to each one. If you prefer to pay online, you can visit AdventistGiving.org. The Adventist Giving app and website can help you prioritize your tithes and offerings. It can speed up the process of giving or automate it entirely.
And finally, for today's episode, let's turn to Ashley Chisholm for a look at Adventist history.
This week, we learn about how one woman's trust in God took her around the world as a missionary.
Brethren and sisters, God wants me, Hetty Hurd said at an 1884 meeting of Adventists in Lemoore, California, convicted of the need to personally do missionary work. Hetty Hurd was born January 23, 1857, in the U.S. state of Illinois. As a single woman, she worked as a successful district school teacher, and then in 1884, her sister Emma and Emma's husband Harvey invited Hetty to the California camp meeting, where she took Bible studies and was baptized. Hurd was convicted that God wanted her. So she stopped teaching school and took up city mission work in downtown San Francisco, California. From California, Hurd went to London, England as a missionary in 1887, and then to South Africa in 1891, and then in 1897 to Australia, where she married Stephen N. Haskell, a fellow missionary. The Haskells returned to the United States in 1897, working in various places from their home base in South Lancaster, Massachusetts. It was there, on July 15, 1919, Hetty Haskell fell ill after returning from the camp meeting in New Jersey. 3 months later, she died at age 62, after a life, quote, lovingly devoted to her master for more than half a century. And that was this week in Adventist history.
Thanks for watching ANN. Join us next week for more news from the headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
We'd love to hear from you. Send us your feedback and tell us how your church is making a difference in its community.
Be sure to capture plenty of video footage and photos, then write up a summary of the event's important details. And feel free to send full video reports as well.
You can reach us by sending an email to annvideo11@gmail.com.
Before we say goodbye, here's some good news from the book of Psalms, chapter 73, verses 25 and 26.
The passage says, "Whom have I in heaven but you, and earth has nothing I desire besides you. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever."
That's our program for this week. And remember, you can always visit news.adventist.org for daily news and videos. Until next time, God bless.
Take care.